All right, good to see everybody. Welcome to Perfect Your Persuasive Pitch. My name is Martin McGovern, and my work is career coaching. I come from the marketing world. I started out my career doing marketing and advertising for large organizations and companies, Fortune 500 brands, and really got into the behavioral psychology of everything and kind of what is it that makes us do the things that we do, especially when it comes down to the nuances of communication. And over the years, as I got more involved in the education space and working with boot camps and helping people build their personal brands, I eventually transitioned into career coaching and taking all of this marketing psychology and reverse engineering it so you can get money back from these companies that are so good at getting it from you. So really excited to talk today about your stories, your pitches, how you're selling yourself in this job search, and figure out how to make yourself the most desirable candidate for these companies. Before we jump in, I'd love to get a sense from everyone here. What is the most nerve-wracking part of the job search for you as you gear up for this next shift in your career?
Feeling underprepared.
Feeling underprepared in which way? Is it interviews, the applications, or everything?
Content, interviews,
Technical skills.
kind of just, overall,
Everything.
just, yeah.
Overall, fair enough. Fair enough. And that's fair because, you're going through a transitional period and we always feel like we're lacking confidence when we're transitioning, right? When we're going from one place to another, especially because it seems like everyone has their act together, right? And so there's a lot of things that we'll cover today in regards to that. Are there any other things on folks' minds when it comes to the job search that you want to make sure we cover today?
Differentiating yourself from others.
All right, that's exactly what we're going to get into, right? Because you're all going to be, graduating from a similar place, but you all have very different stories. So we're going to get into exactly how to differentiate. Not hearing back, right? That's going to be a big one, especially since job boards have such low response rates, usually around 1 to 5%. So how do we actually talk to the right people and get people to respond to us, right? So we'll jump on in here. So the first thing here is we're going to break down today's conversation into 3 different areas. The first one is a shift in mindset. How do you go from I want a job, the very me first mindset, to how do I put them first? It's a very sales mindset, but we're going to make it a little more approachable. I'm not trying to turn you into salespeople, just trying to get you to think in the way that the companies are hoping to hear you talk. All right. The next piece here is your unique stories. All right. Knowing what stories we have to tell, what's in our arsenal, will give us the confidence we need in the job search. And then bringing all of that together into a pitch is where we're going to end. And we have a bit of an exercise and a template for you to use at the end of the program here in order to write out your pitch. And you can even put it on your LinkedIn or your resume after you put it together here. So when I talk about putting them first, this is probably the biggest radical shift that I'm trying to help people make in the job search. If you look at someone's cover letter, or if you talk to them about what they want in their next job, they tend to talk a lot about themselves. Cover letters are really the worst place for this. You'll see, I've seen cover letters where every single sentence started with I, me, or my. It's actually impressive. I'm like, wow, you fit a lot of me statements in this thing. You never once talked about the company or what they need, right? And so trying to shift that perspective a little is going to be pretty big. Because the first thing is that really at the end of the day, it's not about you. It's about them and their needs, right? What we're trying to do is convince a company to give us a large sum of money in order for our skills to solve one of their problems. Right? So it's not about getting a chance. It's not about breaking into the industry or getting mentorship or any of that stuff, although you will get those things too. It's about what did they get for the money that they pay you. So what we want to do is build that trust, build that rapport, and understand the value add that we bring to a company, which is tough when you're not feeling confident already, right? How do you talk about the ROI of your work when you're already not confident in your work? What do you think people typically say when I say, tell me about yourself, or, what are you currently doing in your career? When they graduate a boot camp, what do you think they say?
Studying, working on projects.
Studying and working on projects. And if you were in an interview and you said, tell me about yourself, what do you think the typical answer would be?
I went to a
I
boot
think
camp.
maybe
I went to a boot camp, exactly, right? So I recently graduated and I'm excited for the opportunity to learn in this role, receive mentorship, and build my career, all right? So I've already hinted at this, but what do you think companies hear when you say something like that? What do you think they're hearing in their mind?
The bold.
What was that?
The bold. I recently graduated.
I recently graduated. And what are they going to infer from that?
He's green.
green,
Green,
unexperienced.
inexperienced, right? So when we say that to a company, what they hear is, I'm inexperienced, unemployed, and need you to teach me. I'm going to cost this company a lot of money. All right. So imagine if I said to you, hey, hire me as a career coach because I really want to get better at writing resumes. It's a weird thing, right? You wouldn't want to hire me. Right? You're like, hey, how about you learn how to write a resume? Then maybe I'll hire you to do it. Okay. So we don't want to lead with this, I don't know what I'm doing statement. We want to lead with, here's what I do know. Obviously, there's more to learn, but I can help with what I know. And while I'm on the job, I, of course, can fill in the blanks, right? And it really does start to build confidence in the conversation that you're having, right? Because you're putting yourself into their shoes. Most people say that answer to the tell me about yourself question because they never actually sat down in the other seat and asked themselves, what does the other person hear when I say something like this, right? It's kind of like if you go on a date with someone and they're just always talking about themselves. And at the end, you're like, this person's a narcissist, but they're like, that was an amazing date. It's like, no. You got to realize that what's going on in your head is not the same as what's going on in other people's minds, especially if you're anxious or overwhelmed or unsure of yourself, right? So we got to manage that process. So we really have to think about, what do companies care about the most when hiring for these roles, when looking for candidates, and why are they hiring for this position? Does anyone have any ideas? What do companies care about and why are they hiring?
I think they usually want you to solve a problem or meet a need that they have currently.
100%. Every single job is a company saying we need help. They're not saying we have so much money, let's give someone a chance. That's never the place they're coming from. They're always coming from, oh my God, our customers are leaving, or we don't have enough customers, or we need to retain our customers, or what's going on with our website, it's broken, we need help. It's always coming from this place of fear and potential growth because they're trying to accomplish something, launch something, fix something. It's coming from a need, from a problem. If they didn't have any problems, they wouldn't post a role, right? Well, they might have problems and still not post the role, but they wouldn't post the role unless they had unless there was a problem they were trying to solve. They wouldn't say, boy, everything is functioning perfectly fine in our company. Let's go post a new junior role for a software developer, right? It's just not going to happen. So we always want to ask, what is the problem? And we want to shift the perspective off of ourselves. And this is actually something that's going to be healthy for you, regardless of all the rest of this, right? I think that there's a hyper focus on the job seeker in the way that we talk about careers today. If you go on, I'm sure many of you have been on LinkedIn recently, right? And everything is like, get what you're worth, believe in yourself, find your passion, all this stuff, right? And look, good stuff to do on your own, journaling, figuring out your life, figuring out your career, do all that work on your own and in your own time. But when you go out to talk to the marketplace, if there's too much of a spotlight on you and you're feeling a little insecure, it's probably going to be pretty overwhelming, right? So when I say, tell me about yourself, what's the first feeling you get? Do you feel excited to talk about yourself? Are you just chomping at the bit to answer that question? I'm guessing by the silence, no. What goes doubt? Doubt goes through your head, right? So I just think it's kind of interesting how we say simultaneously, this is going to be the most transitionary period of your career where you're learning all these new skills, you're trying to break into a new industry, you're trying to meet new people, and you're unsure of yourself. And also you should be fully confident in everything about yourself. No, it's an outrageous ask. You shouldn't be fully confident. You should be curious. Confidence comes from exposure. Curiosity is always there. So you're always curious, but what you should be curious about isn't how do I make myself sound more impressive? Because that just leads to a lot of BS. What you want to do is say, how can I understand the company better? And then position myself in the terms that they want to hear. All right. So it's really bad for us to just always focus on ourselves and what we want. It's good to have a little bit of that, but it's good to balance it out with, well, I know what I want. Let's see what the company wants, and let's see if we can make those two things work together. So we'll move away from that self-centered mindset and we'll start thinking about them, right? So let's say you're talking to a recruiter. What do recruiters care about? What do you think?
Themselves.
Skill set.
Themselves, the skill set, cool. What's their incentive? Start thinking about things in terms of incentives. What is a recruiter's incentive to help you?
To get paid.
To get paid. How do recruiters get paid?
I want to get us placed regardless of what job it is.
They want to get someone placed. You said us, but I'll just say someone. They want to get someone placed regardless of the job. Who do recruiters work for?
The company.
The company or themselves? Who do the recruiters not work for?
Us.
Right.
Or the
You're spot on. And I say that because you're going to get ghosted by some recruiters at some point in your job search. And you're going to get really frustrated because they're going to make you feel really special. And they're going to say that you're a perfect fit for the jobs that they want to put you in and all these different things. And then they're going to ghost and you're going to go, what the hell? Where'd this person go? I was like chilling out over here, not job seeking, because they kind of basically promised that they'd find me a job. But we forgot about their incentives. They're not incentivized to get you a job. They're incentivized to get the company the best employee, because the company will pay them a percentage of that employee's salary. They're also incentivized to place more senior people because they get a percentage of the salary. So people with harder stories to tell and lower salaries are less appealing for recruiters to work with than senior people with higher salaries and more established work histories, right? It's easy for them to place someone who used to work at Google than it is for them to place someone who's trying to break into the industry. Do you see the difference there? So if you're going to work with a recruiter, you have to play to their incentives. You have to help them tell your story in a compelling way, which means you need to know your story and communicate it to them so that they can re-communicate your story to the company and sell you properly. But if you just say, here's my resume, figure it out, they're not going to be able to help you as much because it's not their job to learn how to tell your story. It's their job to find the easiest to tell story in the stack and sell that person, right? What about hiring managers? What do you think they care about?
Finding the best candidate.
Yeah,
Finding
getting
the best
job done.
candidate, getting the job done. They're most concerned about finding someone who won't derail their projects. I want someone on my team who can get along with everyone, who can figure out their job and not always come to me for like, what should I do? What should I do? What should I do? So someone who can take ownership of things and someone who won't derail projects over stupid little things, right? I want the color to be blue. I want it to be green. And now the whole project's off course, right? They want someone who is adaptable and who can work with a team. So they're thinking, how do you fit within this team? We have someone who's really technical. We also need someone with design. We need someone who's really good at like public speaking when we give presentations to the boss. We need to be able to fill out this team with all the right skills. So talking to the hiring manager about what kind of skills do you have on this team and what are you missing? And what are you looking for in a candidate will help you understand if you can fit that need, right? What do you think CEOs care about? What's their incentive?
The bottom line.
The bottom line. Do you care about the growth of our business, or do you just care about your own personal growth, right? So if you come in, you say, how does my role ladder up into the overall strategy and impact the growth of the business? They're gonna be like, damn, this person is on it. I want this person on our team. Even at a junior level, they're thinking at this amount, you know? And then networking contacts. People are scared to ask for referrals, but what is the incentive for someone to give you an internal referral? Referral bonuses. They might get $1,000 to $5,000 for referring you to the job if you get the job. I've actually gotten a job through an internal referral once, and the person said, if you quit before I get my payout, I'm going to be very upset with you because I want to go to Hawaii. I was like, all right, cool, whatever makes you help me. I'm cool with it. They didn't help me because of me. They helped me because they had their own incentives. So you want to play into other people's incentives. They might have also wanted to help me, but hey, I'm going to play towards the incentives that matter, right? So we always want to be asking, what do they want? All of these companies, all of these people have incentives and needs. And if we can address those things, they will be much more inclined to help us, right? It's the difference between I need to wait to network until I know all the jargon, which someone said to me once. And I need to go talk to a lot of people to figure out what it is they care about and see if I can help, you know? One is trying to sound impressive and the other is trying to be helpful. If you're the most helpful person in the job search, you'll probably stand out to the person next to you, okay? And this brings us to the ROI of your role, the return on investment, because at the end of the day, how much money are you asking these companies for? Anyone have an idea of the salary range you're looking for in your next role?
With an average of 70K, it's around 60 to 80, right?
You got it. So Blake, can you give me $70,000?
Not yet.
No. And if I were to actually try and convince you to give me $70,000 over the course of the next year, what would I have to do to earn that money from you?
Your ROI would have to make me more money at the end of the day.
Exactly. So I would need to know that the amount of money you're going to make off of the work that I do exceeds the amount you're going to pay me, right? Now, do you know exactly how much? Probably not, right? My career as a career coach is a little more direct, right? You pay me X amount of dollars for coaching services. You make a $70,000 salary. You're probably not paying me $70,000 for my coaching services. I mean, unless something horrible has happened. And you're going to be happy with that, right? Because the return on investment is high. Same with companies. They don't want to pay you 70K. And then when they ask you, do you understand how your role impacts the bottom line of the business? And you go, what? The bottom line of what? No, I'm just here to do what you tell me to do. They're going to be like, damn it, this person's going to cost us a lot of money, right? So we need to ask ourselves, what do we think the ROI of our role is? Does anyone have an idea? What kind of work do you do, Blake?
We do software engineering.
So let's say you join a company and they ask you to launch a new app for their clients, right? What kind of an ROI will that bring to a company generally? You don't have to give me numbers, but like what impacts do you think that will have on the bottom line?
Probably more customer interaction, more income, just higher numbers in general, just for
Yeah.
having more.
Increases in
interact with.
engagement, increases in retention. And then you can ask questions in the interview. What is your general, cost per acquisition? What is your average value per customer, right? How much is a new customer worth to the company? And what is the purpose of this new app? Are we trying to retain customers, get new customers? What are we trying to accomplish here? So you can ask questions, and that again puts you in this curiosity space where you're talking to them about their problems. And then when they give you answers, you can go, here's how my skills could help you launch an app that would do those things, right? So they've already worked out the ROI. They wouldn't have posted the role if they didn't have a somewhat of an idea, because in posting the role, they have to go to management and they have to say, here's our budget, here's our expected return on this role, and here's what we're looking for in someone to do this role so that we can achieve that return. All right. So they've got it fixed in their head already. You just have to let them know that you know that they care about the ROI and that you care about the ROI. And if you can get that across, they're going to know that you're going to put in the effort to achieve it, right? It's the people that go in and go, so how many vacation days am I going to get? Or are you going to give me a mentor? Or what's the onboarding like? Questions that don't really matter until you're like talking to your manager after signing the acceptance document. Those questions are all about what you get, but it's better to start with, what do I give? And then once they've explained, well, I mean, we're going to give you 70, 80K to do this job. It's going to make us way more money. And then you can go, that's awesome. So clearly there's value here. Could I go do a education stipend and go to an event or something like that in order to build my skills to improve the company, not just for me to get exposure, but for me to help the company. So if you always twist it back to this helps the company, then you get helped along the way too. If your salary is a value add to the company, well, of course you can negotiate for $10,000 more, because it's not about you, it's about them and the return they're getting from that money, And so we always want to position ourselves as a value add. Any questions on this ROI piece? Because I do feel like it sometimes gets a little bit sticky with folks. I'm seeing some shaking heads.
Just proving your ROI. How do we go through that through asking them questions?
And that's where I'll make a slight nuance. You don't need to prove your ROI. You need to showcase that you care about the ROI. All right. I don't know what the ROI of my job is to the dollar, but I know that by not having me, that it's an expense, like it's not good. So if I was a web developer, let's say you're a junior web developer and there's a senior on the team. A lot of times people will be like, well, my ROI is pretty low because there's a senior. So obviously the senior's ROI is bigger than mine. And that is true. But let's say you join a team and you're doing debugging. All right. You might say there's not that much value in the debugging, right? It's just debugging, right? There might be some value. It might even be more than what they pay me, but it doesn't feel like it's this huge thing. I'm not launching new applications. However, because you're doing the debugging, the senior person doesn't have to do the debugging, which means they're free to go launch new products and go create new solutions that better engage the client. So as a contributing member to the team, you contribute to the overall millions of dollars or hundreds of thousands of dollars coming in, even if all you're doing is one small piece of the overall project. What you're doing, what your value is alleviating a burden for the senior team member who's being paid too much to do that debugging. You see? So you're making the company a ton of money. So it's more so what I'm trying to get at here is I want you to know that you have an ROI already without having to prove it. Because if you don't believe that and you go in and you try to ask for 70K when you don't think you're worth it, it's going to be very hard to negotiate. So I just need you to know that your role is valuable and that your work is valuable, even if you don't fully understand how it impacts the business. Because if you don't believe that it's worth it, the company won't believe in you, right? If you don't think that you deserve 60K, the company is going to catch on and they're not going to pay you 60K, right? So we have to know that this dollar amount actually has nothing to do with us as an individual. It has all to do with the job. Whoever is in this role should be paid 70K because the ROI of this role is higher than 70K. So if they put me in that role, I should get what that role deserves. It has nothing to do with me. Do you see? Any follow-ups on that? I know it's a bit of a convoluted way of thinking. Now, how do you figure, oh, I see a raised hand. Go ahead.
So for me, I'm like 22 years old, and this is gonna be like my first like potential career or job where, you know, it's not so simple like, you know, being a cashier or something. And so I don't know what to really expect, you know, from that. And so
Sure.
I am lacking a bit of confidence because of that and uncertainty. So I don't know if like how would you say that I could improve my confidence or stuff like that other than just working on my technical skills.
So working on your technical skills is a great place to start, right? You want to have that down pat so that you don't mess up the coding challenge. However, confidence, I think, is a bit misunderstood as a concept sometimes. A lot of times we perceive confidence to be knowing all the answers. So when someone says to me, I want to be more confident, what they really mean is I want to go study more and be infallible in the interview, let's say, right? And confidence isn't about, in my mind, confidence is not about being perfect. Confidence is about being comfortable even when you don't know the answer. So that to me is confidence, right? Someone might throw me a curveball here that I have no idea the answer to. If I was trying to know every answer that could possibly be thrown my way, I would never sleep because I do these talks all the time and there's an infinite number of things you could ask me, right? So if I were to try and know everything in order to be confident, my life would be hell. Instead, what I do is I know that there will be some things that I don't have the answer to, and I have prepared responses for when that happens. So someone once came up to me after a personal branding workshop and they said, I have a stalker. I can't put myself out on LinkedIn and have a personal brand. And I went, wow, okay, I have no idea how to help in this case. You know, like I have no idea. I've never come across this situation before. They said, what should I do about personal branding? And I said, I don't know. Let's sit down and talk. And we talked it out and they decided to do more one-on-one networking in order to avoid the online personal branding space. And that was something we came up with together. And so it's not about having all the answers. It's about knowing that even if you don't have the answer, you can figure it out with the skills that you've learned. And that was the whole point of the boot camp, to show you how to find the answer. So when it comes down to confidence, I would ask this question. If you were given enough time and access to Google, could you figure out most of the problems that get thrown your way in this role? Not being rhetorical. What do you think?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Because every single job that you're going to have throughout your entire life, yeah, the interview process might be stressful and they might not let you use Google for certain things. But when you're in the job, you will have time and access to Google and access to the alumni network of your school and access to friends who are also coders. You're going to have a lot of support. So it's not about knowing everything. It's about knowing that even though you don't know everything, you're probably okay. And that's what confidence is, right? So when you're preparing for interviews, don't go in trying to know the answer to every question. Go in and be ready to screw up and then get back on track. So for instance, I'm a rambler. In an interview, if I start rambling, like the old way is like, never say never say don't ramble, right? And spend your entire life trying to fix that, right? Well, that's very stressful and very difficult to do. So instead, what we want to do is say, if I ramble, how do I get back on track? And the way that I've found that to be useful is to go, when I catch myself rambling, I stop and I go, sorry, I get really excited about this topic. Let me restate the question and make that answer a little bit more succinct. And that's confidence. I screwed up, but I'm okay with the fact that I screwed up. And now we're back on track. All right. So that's what we're trying to get you to with this mindset here and with the stories we're going to tell. Does that help?
Yep.
Cool. Now, if you're sitting there going, but what value do I actually bring to a team? And you're trying to just invent it off the top of your head, it might be a little hard to do. So what I would encourage you to do is go to Google and type in, why should I hire a software developer? Okay. This will take you to a bunch of Google results that very clearly detail out the ROI of what software developers do. And the best thing to do is to write it in this way, because this is what the companies had to do. The person that created the job description sat down and said, should we hire a software engineer or a front-end engineer or a full stack engineer or back-end engineer or data analyst? Like, what are we trying to do? What role are we trying to fill? I'm going to Google a bunch of things and see, why should I hire this? What value do I get from this? And they're going to look at these results and they're going to say, okay, as a business analyst or as a web developer can address bugs, can create new applications, can launch new products, et cetera, et cetera. And so you go down that list and you say, here's the things that I want to help companies do. And now you know what the companies are looking for and how they talk about it. You can also go look at consulting websites. So go look at websites of like, small consulting agencies that do web development work and look at their sales page and see how they position themselves. And then you can borrow, copy and paste your favorite pitches from their pages, right? Your favorite sales copy, and then make it your own. Don't quote it directly, but you get what I'm saying here, right? This is all out there. It's all been done before. You are not starting from scratch. So don't feel like you have to think it up in a vacuum. You can actually rely on the resources that already exist and the things that you've learned in class. Because the goal here is to sell to them the way that they sell to us. I'm a very big proponent of treat companies the way that they treat you. All right. So companies have no problem taking away an offer after giving it to you if situations change, budgets change, a pandemic happens. So if you accept an offer, but then get a better one, you're more than within your rights to rescind the first offer and take the second one because your situation changed. So treat companies how they treat you, right? Companies are selling you a bill of goods when they show you this job description. Do you think job descriptions are accurate representations of the role? Not even close. Has anyone ever gotten a job and then once you're in there, you're like, this isn't at all what I thought this job would be? Or they just change your responsibilities completely after like a month? Has anyone had that happen?
Yes.
Yes, exactly, right? And the company isn't going to say, we're posting this job because the last person that was in this role, we made them work every weekend and they completely burnt out because they never saw their family. So we're rehiring for this role.
I feel like you're describing higher ed.
There you go. So they're not going to say that. They're going to say, this is an amazing opportunity with a ton of potential and you can really move around in our company and there's so much mentorship and we're the best on the planet and we create solutions that change the world. And you're like, cool, whatever that means, right? So why do you go in, or most job seekers go in and say, I'm inexperienced and I'm trying to find my first job and I don't really know all these things and I wish you'll teach me, Why do we show all of our insecurities, but they only show this like marketing version of themselves? So market to them the way they market to you. Nike would never come up to you and say, our shareholders want more money. Can you please buy more shoes? That'd be insane. Could you imagine? Could you imagine? McDonald's, we killed a bunch of cows and we need you to eat them. That'd be insane. So we need to sell to them the way they sell to us. Just do it. You know, it's only the crazy one. It's only a crazy dream until you do it. I'm an amazing candidate and you should hire me. And then once you're in there, you're like, Google, 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 right? That's every job. It's all good. Don't worry about it. So don't feel like you have to be like Scout's honor on everything, okay? You don't want to lie. I'm not saying like make up a history that doesn't exist. I'm just saying give them your best polished marketed version of yourself the same way they're giving you their best polished marketing version of themselves, all right? This is date one of a dating app. It's not 6 years into a relationship. Eventually they'll get to know who you are and you'll get to know them, all right? Job boards are billboards. You only need to have about 60% of what's listed. I've had people come up to me and say, well, I don't have these two things. And I go, but that's in like their extra section where it says like nice to haves. That's not even in the core competencies. And they're like, yeah, but I don't have the nice to haves. And I go, who cares? Apply anyway. Network with people at the company. They will probably not find someone within their budget who has all these things. So you have a good chance of selling them on yourself if you just have the confidence to go through, reach out to people, apply to the job anyway, all right? And your research will only go so far. You need to ask questions, and I highly, highly, highly recommend talking to people who work at the company before the interview process. Networking is the best way into a job, all right? Because you'll learn things that you normally would not learn from the internet. If you go to their about page and their mission statement, all you're going to see is a bunch of BS. If you go talk to someone who recently quit the company, you're going to learn everything you want to know about that company. All right. So be creative and go meet people, because that's where the real knowledge is. If you want to know what starting salaries are in your area, go talk to a bunch of senior people and ask them what their starting salaries were when they broke into the industry in your city, because then you'll actually get real answers. All right. I see another hand raised. Go ahead. Oh, maybe it's just a notification from the hand that was already up. That's okay. Because at the end of the day, companies really want to trust you. They, in their heart of hearts, know that there's no perfect candidate. They know that you're not going to know everything. They sometimes push you and ask questions just to see if you'll be honest about not knowing something. I was interviewing someone on an alumni panel, and they said, in my interviews, the way I conduct them is I ask progressively more difficult questions to the point where I don't even know the answers, just to see if this person will be honest about not knowing something with me. Because I don't want to hire someone who will BS me in the job and say they know something, and then 3 months later, the whole project is fucked. Sorry to drop an F-bomb. But they don't want to hire someone who's going to like make shit up, right? They want to hire someone who's going to ask questions, be curious, clarify things before starting the project. They're looking for someone who's engaged, all right? So don't try to be perfect. Just try to be curious and interested in the role, all right? And that, at the end of the day, is what we're trying to do. Put them first. My skills only matter insofar as they help your company accomplish your goals. And if you need me to build more skills, I'm happy to do that. All right. Any questions on this section before we move on?
No, I don't have a question, but I appreciate what you just said, because I was looking at a position here in a small town that's for a software developer, and I was thinking, well, maybe I can go to them and I don't know, ask for a reduced salary. So it's all about me getting training, blah, blah, blah. So now I'm looking at it differently and I appreciate it.
For sure. Because I've had clients that did that. I had a client on an interview, desperate as hell, and he said, I'll take no money if you just hire me today. Do you think he got hired? No. That's like someone on a date just saying, I'll do anything you want if you just go out with me. No one wants to go out with that person, right? It's because it's a risk. Even not paying someone is a risk because they could come onto your team and derail the project and screw everything up. And that will cost thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands potentially, you know? Sammy, did you have something to add? I keep getting a notification that your hand is raised.
Oh no, sorry, I forgot to put my hand
No
down.
worries, you can just put it down. So yeah, you don't want to be the person that's desperate. You want to be the person that is quietly confident. You're here to help, you're excited about the role, but if they don't want you, if they don't need you, you've got plenty of other things to go do. This is why I also encourage people to build personal brands and build freelancer brands, because it's much better to come from a place of, I've got a bunch of projects going on, but I'm happy to put them aside to work on your company. Then I have nothing happening. Will you please give me something to do? Right? It's better to go from employed to self-employed than employed to unemployed. Even if self-employed is kind of just a hodgepodge of volunteer projects and freelance things and classes you're taking and whatever. But you can categorize that and you can utilize it as a starting point for the conversation. This brings us to your unique stories. All right. So at the end of the day, we really only need a handful of stories for the interview. Sometimes I see people like try to come up with a new story for every question for hundreds of questions. It's exhausting. We're just going to focus on a few core projects and examples that you can talk about that can answer most interview questions. We also want to focus on the things that you learned from these experiences rather than the experiences themselves. And you want to focus on what you can do and what you're capable of more than what you have done in the past, all right? There's a very big difference when someone says, do you know this technology? And you say, I don't, I've never used it. And then there's a long silence in the interview. And they go, okay, cool, next question. There's a big difference between that and do you know this technology? And you say, I haven't used that one specifically, but I've used these ones that are similar to it. This is my understanding of that tech, and I could probably get up and running in like 3 to 6 weeks. How is your team using that in your projects right now? And now you're having a conversation about what you need to learn rather than what you're lacking. See? So what do you think we don't want to say? Well, we don't want to say, I like to solve problems. I want to make a difference. Has anyone said either of these things? Seeing some grins.
I've
ahead.
said I like to solve problems in an interview before.
Yeah. So why do we not want to say these things?
Because they're generic and really say absolutely nothing.
I like to solve problems too, but I like to solve very different problems than you guys. I'm a career coach. It's a totally different skill set. I do not like to solve coding problems. I've done a little bit of coding and I'm terrible at it. So solving problems tells people nothing. As a matter of fact, I'm sure there's someone who needs their dog walked right now. That's a problem that they have. Would you like to do it? Probably not, right? Probably someone that needs like their butt wiped too. So this is what they hear. I don't understand the value of my work or why you would hire me. So we need to be much more clear on the types of problems we like to solve, all right? So if you're a coder, you like to solve coding problems, but you can get even more specific than that. I like to solve front-end problems, design problems, back-end problems, data problems. I like to solve user problems. I like to solve internal problems, B2B problems, B2C problems, right? Start thinking about how businesses operate and see where you fit within it, and then adjust it for the roles, right? You don't have to say, I like to solve front end problems. And then you're talking to someone about a back end role and you're like, no, just front end. Like, don't get stuck, you know, you can adapt. But always think about adapting what you're saying to what they want to hear. And then if you really don't want to do that, like let's say it's back end and you hate back end and you want to do front end, don't lie. Just be like, you know, this maybe isn't the right role for you, and go for the front end roles. And as you're doing this, you're going to want to start talking about other problems that you've solved, right? So if you like to solve problems, that means that you've probably solved similar problems in the past. So what is a time that you struggled in a project? What is a time that you succeeded in a project? What's a time that you had a conflict in a project? And what's a time that you showed leadership in a project? All right. So take a moment and just think of one of these. What's a time that you struggled in a project? Can anyone come up with a struggle that you had? And share it. Feel free to unmute.
Building out a backend API in Flask.
Cool. So you struggled building out a backend API in Flask. What project was that for?
In the coding bootcamp, just our capstone project.
Okay, so your capstone project. So you have the big cloud story of your capstone project. And within that, I bet you could find a struggle, a success, a conflict, and a time that you showed leadership. So what we need are these like cornerstone projects that we've had in our life, and then we can attack it from different angles depending on the questions that they ask us. All right. So I could talk about this time that I was working on a high-end coaching product for an ed tech company. And if you asked me a time that I had a conflict with a coworker, I would just zoom in on that one conflict with a coworker part. And then if you asked me a time I showed leadership, I would zoom in on the leadership piece. And if you asked me about a time that I, you know, am proud of some work that I did, I would zoom in on the, you know, outcomes of that role. And each big cornerstone project that we have has many stories in it. And that way, when we're answering questions in an interview, we don't have to come up with a new story for every question. We just have to focus on different aspects of the same story. And if you have like 4, 5, 6 stories, you should be able to answer dozens and dozens of questions. So it's very helpful to kind of take a big story and break it down into smaller chunks. And that way you don't have to reintroduce the story every single time, right? I could say, remember the story I told you earlier about the high-end product that I was working on? Here was one of the things that I struggled with on that project. I've already told you about the success. Now I'm going to talk about the struggle, all right? And don't be vague. Paint a picture in their minds, all right? If I said, tell me about a time you had a conflict with a coworker, and you said, this one time I had a conflict with a coworker, I'd be like, cool. Who? Where? When? What was the conflict? What did you do to resolve it? What did you learn from the situation, right? We got to give a little bit more than just the high end. And believe me, I've been in some weird interview situations where the person's like, well, this one time, you know, I didn't get along with a coworker and we just didn't really get along. And you know, I mean, eventually I went to a different company. It's like, what am I supposed to do with that information? That gives me no, like, you're not thinking about it from the listener's perspective, right? I'm sitting here going, how is this story going to show up in my job, in the work that we do, right? And we want to be able to give them some context clues on how to do that. So how do we actually do it? Well, first of all, pull some stories from your coursework and your capstones and everything like that. So that'll really help. And then organize your stories using the STAR, or what I like to call the spiral method. Does anyone know what the STAR method is? So the STAR method, you can search, it's a big term, it's out there. You'll see a lot of videos on it and stuff. It's situation, task, action, result. All right, it's a way of telling stories. So I set up the situation. I was working at this company on this project. The task we were assigned was to build a retention, mechanism in the software. The action that I took was using this technology to build it. And the result I got was we increased retention by X amount. All right. I change it up a little bit to the spiral method. And I've one of my clients, he's like, I spiral so I don't spiral, because he's a rambler. And I was like, that's a really cool way to put it. But what I added to this is the learning. What the STAR method misses out on is, what did you learn from that experience that you're going to apply in a future role? All right. So the situation, I was working at this company on this project. The problem that came up, we were trying to get more retention, or we were trying to launch a new product, or we were trying to do X, Y, and Z. The action I took was to implement this system to accomplish these things. We got this result. And what I learned from it is that in the future, I always need to be doing these things. How have you seen that show up in your work on this team? And now you're getting into a conversation with the hiring person, right? So let's take the example of like a conflict with a coworker. All right. So hypothetically, I was working on a marketing team, and I was working on a tech team, and let's say I'm a UX designer. I was working on a tech team, and I really wanted to create wireframes of everything before we moved into production. But I was the only person who was a designer on the team, and everyone wanted to move really fast. So they thought we wouldn't need wireframes. So that was a problem. So I voiced my opinion. I let everyone know, like, it'd be really important to do some wireframes, but I kind of got outvoted in that situation. So we ended up not creating wireframes because I wanted to be more of a team player. And the result was, about halfway through the project, we had to go back to the beginning and create wireframes because we had screwed a bunch of things up. What I learned from that experience is that I need to be a little bit more assertive and take more initiative in order to, number one, always have wireframes before starting a project, but number two, make sure that the team knows why that's important. All right. So by doing that, you're giving context to how you've grown from that role and what you're going to be and why you're going to be a great employee in the next role. Okay. Any questions on this way of organizing things? And the key thing here is what you learned. That's the most important thing in every story, right? If you're listening, if you're watching some movie and they do the whole hero's journey and it ends with the person just being right at the same place that they were before, it's kind of unsatisfying. It's actually like a trick that Rick and Morty pulls, where every single episode they go through this emotional arc, but end up back at a place where they haven't grown at all. Like, it's a joke because you're supposed to grow. Like, that's one of the things that he does as a joke as a writer, because he hates traditional ways of writing. He's a very, very creative guy, but you don't want to do that in your stories. You want to show growth in all of your stories. You don't want to be a Rick and Morty character. So always focus on the learning. And this is where we get into a little bit of a gray area where I almost hate myself, but be a little bit of a politician in how you answer questions. I think that the way politicians answer questions is a little bit BS, where they get up on stage and, they don't get up on stage and say, boy, I hope they ask me that question that I want to be asked. I really sure hope they ask it. No, they get up on stage and they say, here's the stories I'm telling. I don't give a crap what the questions are. I'm telling these stories. That's why it's like, what are your thoughts on agriculture? Well, Joe the farmer also said this, and now I'm going to tell this story. It's like, all right, whatever. Don't be a total politician, because that won't go well. But if they ask you a crappy question, it doesn't mean you have to give a crappy answer. All right. Try and give an answer to what you think they're trying to ask, rather than just bluntly answering what they say. So for instance, what are your strengths and weaknesses? Who here likes to answer that question? Not a single hand went up, right? So why do we hate that question? What do you think?
It's a trick question.
It's a trick question. What's the trick?
Well, you know that you're not supposed to make yourself sound like all glowy because nobody's going to believe you, but you're also not supposed to be too honest because then nobody wants to hire you. It's kind of like when my mom used to make me pick my own punishment. It's just rude.
It's such a trick. Yeah. What do you think the right way to answer that question is, if everything is a trap? Anyone have any ideas?
Well, you can't say you're perfect, but you could say that you are learning from mistakes you have made. I think is one way I've heard that.
Yeah, well, and these are all the answers to bad questions, right? So I don't think it's necessarily a trap. I think it's lazy. I think that most interviewers have never been trained on how to interview. They went to Google, downloaded a list of basic questions, and they asked them because they don't know what they're doing. And so our job as the interviewee, our job as the interviewee is to help them answer their own bad questions. Help them get the answers that they want to the bad questions that they ask. So another way to look at strengths and weaknesses, rather than saying, I sometimes try too hard and that's my weakness, and I sometimes procrastinate too much and that's a weakness. Like, who doesn't procrastinate? Like, I can guarantee every single one of you in some part of your life is procrastinating something, right? It tells me as a hiring manager, nothing, right? If you're procrastinating work, welcome to the club. If you're procrastinating working out, welcome to the club. Everyone is doing these things, right? So what are they really asking? I want you to always, when you're looking at a list of interview questions, ask yourself, what are they really asking? And this, again, takes their perspective in mind. You have to put yourself into their shoes. So if I said, what are your strengths and weaknesses? And I'm just reading from a piece of paper and I have no idea what I'm really asking. You can kind of assume, if I'm a hiring person, there's a reason that this is a good question. It's worded poorly, but there's a reason it's a good question. And the reason is because as a hiring person, I'm trying to hire a team. And I need to know people's strengths and weaknesses in order to place them on the team appropriately, right? So it's not about your insecurities and your boasts. It's about how do you fit in on the team. So if we were to rephrase it in a not lazy way, it's, if I were to put you on this team, what assignments should I give to you? And what assignments should I give to other people on the team? When it's asked in that way, what kind of answers would you come up with?
I think a lot more specific questions, more like technical questions about like your coding ability. Rather
Exactly.
Than personal self.
Exactly. You wouldn't talk about procrastination because everyone on the team is procrastinating. So who cares, right? So if I were to answer that question, what I would say is, I'm really good at dealing with emotions and helping people navigate through their emotions back to a productive space. So if anyone at the school, if any of your students are crying or going through a hard time or need someone to talk to, I'm the best person to send them to. An example of a time that this happened was someone on the team was going through a breakup during finals, or one of the students was going through a breakup during finals, needed to talk to someone and calm down and get back to, taking their test. And I was able to calm them down and help them out. Now, who on the team would not be good at that? One of the coders, right? Who doesn't want to be bothered and wants you to keep your emotions at home, right? Okay, so what's my weakness? Or what is the thing you shouldn't have me do on the team, right? You shouldn't give me a 3,000 line spreadsheet and say, correlate this data and figure out when someone's going to get a job. I was asked to do that on day one of a job once. They gave me a giant spreadsheet and they said, put together a predictive analysis on when people will get jobs. And I went, say what now? I don't know how to do math. I can barely do addition. What? I'm like, how do I do that? They're like, use these equations. Come on, just make a pivot table. I'm like, what? What are you doing to me? That's not my job. And the point here, and I can make it as funny or as not funny as I want in an interview, but the point here is send me the emotional people, don't give me data, or at least don't make me be the only person looking at the data. I can track data. I can hand the data off to our data person, but don't have me analyze it. And so The goal here is to tell them very upfront, when you put me on this team, put me in this kind of a role and pair me up with someone who's good at these things that I'm terrible at. I won't say it exactly in that way, but that's the idea. So for some of you, it might be, I'm really good at the back end and keeping things organized and keeping things clean and doing the data analysis and like really making sure that everything is being served up properly on the website. But I don't like public speaking, and I'm not very good at like presenting to the C-suite. So if you could put me on a team where I could like put together the presentations and maybe put together the data for the person who's going to go give the presentation, that would be ideal. I can do all the technical stuff and they can do all the more social stuff, right? Or I want to be more back end and less client facing, or I want to be more client facing and less back end, right? Think about it like an 80-20 scenario. I want 80% of my job to be the thing that I'm good at, and I want 20% of the job to be the thing that I'm bad at, or at least less good at, all right? Strengths and weaknesses. So play that out to other questions. Tell me about yourself. What do you think they're really asking?
Where would you fit in the team?
Kind of, but let's start with their perspective. They're just sitting down in the interview. They don't know how to interview. They're reading from a list of questions. When they say, tell me about yourself, what they're really saying is, I have no idea how to start this conversation. Can you kick it off? So everyone's like, what do they want me to say? And I've actually had people go, yeah, I can tell you about myself. Where would you like me to start? And then the interviewer goes, I don't know, anywhere. Because they didn't have an idea. They don't know. They don't know. They need your help. That's the point. These companies need your help so bad because they're so inefficient and they are failing. So they need your help. Even if you feel like you're failing, believe me, these companies are like 3 months away from going under if anything were to happen differently in their business model. All right. So when you go in and they're saying, tell me about yourself, and you get all stressed out, instead ask the question, how do I want to kick this off? What information do I want to relay to start this interview on a good foot? Typically, I say your past, present, future, and we're going to get into that in a minute. And the key thing here is to talk to what you can do. You won't have an answer to every question, and we sort of hit on this. It's like, I don't know that, but I could learn it in 3 to 6 weeks. How's your team currently using that technology? And do you have any recommendations on where I could start studying up so I'd be ready to go on day one? Perfect. All right, so what are your top 4 to 6 struggles and success stories? What'd you learn from these experiences, and how will these learnings inform your future work? Now we get into the pitch, all right? Don't ignore your past, simplify your narrative, and write a pitch that ties your value to their needs, all right? So what we don't want to say is, I didn't like my previous job, so I quit it. I changed jobs to make more money. Why do we not want to say these things?
Top one is like if you struggle, but you're just gonna quit. And the second one is you're just chasing money. You don't care about the company.
Yep, I quit when things are not perfect, and I'll probably quit this job if I don't like it. You don't want to be that person, all right? So negative on the negativity. Always focus on the positive reasons for a change, okay? I started my career off in marketing and advertising. I could easily tell you that I left my first job in marketing because I really didn't like my boss. And I could go on for hours about how much I didn't like my boss. Should I do that in an interview? No. Has everyone had a boss that they feel that way about? Yeah. Over drinks, can we talk about it? Sure. But don't say it in the interview. What I should say is what I said to you at the beginning. I started my career off in marketing and advertising. I noticed I had a real love for communications and behavioral psychology and trying to understand why we do the things that we do, which is what led me into education and eventually coaching, where I now use those same marketing tactics that I used to use to help companies get your money, to help you get money back from them. See how much different that is. It's all about the positive growth from each of these experiences. And the great part is that both are true. I left my job because I didn't like that boss, But I also left my job because I wanted to be more creative and I wanted to get closer to the actual hands-on communications with customers. So I went from marketing to advertising, advertising to education, to consulting, consulting to education, and education to coaching. So just a natural progression to get closer and closer and closer to the consumer, right? So always think about your jobs as what was the best part of that job and how did it inform what I'm doing today? That's how you tie in your past, all right? So in the past, I worked as, let's say, a teacher, all right? I was working as a teacher. I was putting together all these different curriculum for the students and creating great experiences for the students. And that showed me that I really enjoyed getting into like lesson planning and getting into like details and really building these great experiences for people, which ignited my interest in coding and UX. And that's what kind of brought me into this more technical world where rather than working with students, I'm actually working with websites and large customer bases, taking that same planning mindset and applying it in this new way. See how it kind of ties in your past and your present, right? Anyone have a job that they want to share that they did before that you're unsure how to connect to your current work?
I mean, I'm still currently in the industry as like a server
Okay,
restaurant, but I still work there.
so customer service, right? So,
Yes, yeah.
or so you can say in whatever way you want, but what is the thing that you're the best at in that role?
Working in like a high-paced environment.
High-paced environment, doing what kinds of things? Like, what do you do best under stress?
I mean, I guess just multitasking.
Okay. And so just kind of give me a rundown of your duties in your serving role. I know it's straightforward, but
I
give me it
guess-
in your words.
I mean, greeting the customer, explaining how the menu works, explaining the wines that we offer, checking for allergies, I guess maintaining like just like a timetable for each table.
And if you
bringing
didn't do these things, what would the experience in the restaurant be like
for who?
for anyone?
The customer.
For the customers, for anyone, yeah.
I mean, horrible. It could end in, if you got a bad allergy and I ignore it and send you something with almonds.
Yeah,
it could be
exactly.
ugly.
So attention to detail, proper planning, organization, and, customer engagement, making sure that they feel happy about the entire experience and come back again, right? Trying to get people to give you good tips, right? Trying to make sure everything's flowing properly, trying to make sure you're checking in on a regular basis, creating a great experience for the customer. You did it in the physical world, and now you're going to do it in the digital world. So I learned what makes people angry, what little things make people angry, what little things make people incredibly happy. Something as simple as like filling someone's water glass in a timely manner makes them unbelievably happy or angry if it's not done well. And so when I got into tech, I noticed that a lot of these things actually carry over because I really need to understand what little things on the website might create great experiences or awful experiences for people. And I need to design around those things and develop around those things. And I need to really understand the users, so maybe even do user interviews, which I've gotten really good at through my personality that I developed as a server. So you tie it all in, you tie those convertible skills in. Does that make sense? Do you feel like that feels right?
Yeah.
Cool.
Absolutely, for sure.
So for each of us, there's something from our previous role that we can tie in, whether it's detail-oriented, customer, focused, whatever the thing is, you bring that in and that's your differentiator. If you're just someone who graduated and trying to get a job, you're ignoring a key piece because when they say they need 2 to 3 years experience, they're not just saying in coding. They're saying experience with people so that I know you're not an a-hole who's going to derail my project, right? They want to make sure that you can be around people without causing problems. Like most of what we do in our job, like 2/3 of our job is just not pissing people off and responding to things on time. And then the other third is like the actual technical work, right? So like, if you can just like make sure nothing blows up, you're doing most of your job, and then you do the technical stuff. I mean, people who have great technical skills, but who are complete nightmares in the office get fired all the time. And people with lacking technical skills get hired because they're so good at getting along with people. So these are just good things to know. Double down on your present and lean into it. I come from this place and that gave me the baseline to build these new skills. And now I do this stuff and help companies in these ways. And I'm really excited to help your company in the future, right? By the way, I've been doing this presentation for so long and it just finally realized that that's not the actual Doc and Marty. Like, who are these jamokes? I have no idea who they are, but weird things I noticed. And now you bring it all together. So when someone says, tell me about yourself, here's how you can phrase it. I started my career doing this. What I learned about myself doing that thing is this. And that led me into my current work doing this, which is why I'm excited to talk to you about this role today and see how I can bring value to the team. So to use my example, I started my career out in marketing and advertising, where I learned that I had a real interest in behavioral psychology and what makes people tick and how we can communicate in ways that drive behavior. That led me into the education space, where I started applying these marketing skills to job seekers in order to be able to find roles using these marketing tactics. And that's why I'm really excited about this role, helping your school coach its students into new jobs and really try and figure out what it is they're struggling with and how we can help. What are your current students struggling with today? Now we're in a conversation, right? So it's not, am I impressive? It's not any of those things. It's just very clearly stating the path and then opening up the discussion for the rest of the interview. All right. Any questions on this before we move on? I know it's kind of a tough one to wrap your head around at first.
Should you always stay like job oriented, or should you ever talk like personal achievements or
If it's related,
problems?
do you have something in mind? Something particular?
No, I'm just curious if, I don't know, just like things that you've overcome that didn't include like just like working, even just like between, or disappointments, or how you overcame difficult situations.
I might save them for like different questions that come up. We don't have to say everything all up front. And I think that's one of the dangers that we fall into, is we try and tell them everything about ourselves. The tell me about yourself question is a teaser trailer to open up the conversation for you to go deeper, right? Sometimes people give their entire story with all of their examples and like all of their projects and everything. And then the next question is, okay, tell me about a project that you showed leadership on. And they're like, well, I just did in the first question. It's like, yeah, we shouldn't have, we shouldn't have started so hot. Like a nice, simple, short kind of intro, and then opening it up. So you can definitely talk about personal things. I think there's a line though. I had someone say, when do I tell them I have ADHD and then I'll probably have to go home early? I was like, not in the interview. Maybe once they offer you the job and you're negotiating, or maybe once you have the job and you've built a good relationship with your manager and they're willing to hear you. But I mean, that's a surefire way to not get the job, disabilities and everything aside. We can talk about prejudice and we can talk about all those things. And there is like a line that if it's crossed, the company's in trouble. But also we have to understand how people work and what incentivizes people. And we need to pick our stories and guide our stories in the right way, the same way they're picking and guiding their stories to make us want to work there. My favorite thing in the world is the fact that like, I'll get off the phone with someone who's desperate to work at Google. They're like, I just want to work at Google. It's my dream company. I've wanted to work there my whole life. if I don't get a job at Google, I might as well die. And I'm like, cool. Hang up the phone, next call, someone who works at Google. I hate this job. I want to get out of here. Please, please, please help me find a company that doesn't overwork me like this. I can't believe that I work at Google. This is so exhausting. That's the truth. The grass is always greener on the other side, and no one's happy. So just be realistic. These companies are, I always like to say, a company is just a bunch of people running around with their hair on fire trying to put out these fires. And your job is to come in with a little bucket of your skills and try and put a little bit of a flame out, you know? Because every single day is another day that the company might fail. And every single company is like doing their best to hold it all together. And then a pandemic happens and they're like, oh my God, life is a total nightmare right now. You know, like if you think you're kind of figuring things out in a bit of a mess, just remember that a company is just hundreds of you together. All right. So like, I'm trying to just like be funny and like bring down the pressure a little bit, because for some reason, everyone's like, these companies are so amazing and the people that work there are so perfect. And like, believe me, I work with these VPs, I work with these directors. They're a mess too. They're a total mess. Like, or they're like, they have their shit together until they get laid off and then they're a mess. Like at some point they're a mess too, either early on in their career or later, or ageism hits them, like something is going to happen. It's comforting and concerning, but I think it's funny. And I think most of the job search is actually quite humorous if you really step back. Like sitting in a room, in an interview room where they're in like a chair that's slightly higher than you and you're like wearing clothes you never would wear and like you're pretending to be all formal and they don't even know who you are and like they have this abstract power over you. It's all ridiculous, but we do it and we play the game, you know? It's like Crash Bandicoot is a ridiculous game and a very old reference, but you play it because you know you want the enjoyment of it. You play the job game because you want the paycheck at the end of the day. Now, it would be great if you could just go into an interview and say, I want a paycheck. Why do you want to work here? For the money, obviously. Well, why can't we say that? It's the same reason Nike can't say, buy our shoes so our shareholders are happy. We'd say, go to hell, Nike. But if they say, don't you just wish you could run a little faster, jump a little higher, be a little better? Don't you wish? Or Supreme, don't you think you'd be so much cooler and your friends would think you're so much more like stylish if you had a Supreme roll of duct tape? I don't even know what the hell they sell, you know, like a brick with Supreme on it. Like what value is there? Apparently like tens of thousands of dollars if you sell it with a logo on it. Like it's all kind of funny, right?
The thing is where marketing really just starts to feel like magic to me. It just doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. Oh my God. It's 100% magic. And it's sometimes it's magic that I despise and sometimes it's magic that I'm in awe of. But you know, the same with companies. Sometimes companies are such a hot mess, you want to run for the hills. Sometimes they're just a little bit of a hot mess and you want to help. And sometimes they're like really well put together, but only for the next like 5 years. And then the industry changes and they fall off the Fortune 500 list, you know? Like, you never know. And that's what's so fun, right? And that's why we should never get comfortable. And we should always be trying to learn and realizing that everyone else is kind of stupid too, but also kind of smart. And we're all just kind of figuring this stuff out together. All right. I know I'm being kind of wacky right now, but let's bring it all down to a simple pitch just to help you out here with the sales message at the end of the day. Your simplest possible pitch here is to say merging, it's the past, present, future again. Merging a background in my previous role with my current work, I help companies accomplish these goals. So it's your past as the differentiator, your present as your value add, and what you do for the company because you want to relate it back to what they care about. If I just said, I'm a former marketer turned career coach, hire me, you'd be like, why? But if I said, I'm a former marketer turned career coach who helps you better sell yourself to get a higher paying job, now ears perk up, right? So here's what a pitch could look like. Merging a background in customer service and web development, I help companies create amazing experiences for their users online. And you can put this in your LinkedIn summary, in your resume summary. You can actually use this as the baseline for your tell me about yourself question, but of course you'd want to, build it out a little bit and not keep it so short. It's a little too short for an answer. But this is something that we can practice together. So if you could, in the chat, write your pitch. Merging a background in my previous work with my current focus, I help companies accomplish these goals. This is just a starting point for you to think about your entire career arc and how it helps companies. If you're stuck, just unmute and let me know and we can work on it together. All right, we got one. Merging a background in customer service and computer programming, I help companies write cleaner and easier to read code, as well as clean up their UI and UX experience. That's perfect. Love it. Merging a background in university programming and quantitative analysis, I help companies evaluate best practices and set data-driven goals. Cool. I would almost go a little deeper and say, which data-driven goals do you help them set? But great starting point. From my experience in the past in customer service and me learning how to create full stack applications, I help companies take out the can. I help companies retain their existing customers and grow their user base, let's say. Retain and grow their user base. But yeah, really cool. Really good starting point. So what we're doing is we're taking your past, merging it with your present, and adding in a ROI. You're all doing a great job here. So if you want to screenshot this and then come back to it, feel free. Or if you've got it written down already, no worries. And then we can move on here. Does this make sense to everyone? Are there any questions or anyone need help?
Since we're just starting this as
Yeah.
a career, we haven't technically helped. I technically haven't helped companies like write code yet.
Yeah.
So should I still put that as like my pitch, like on my LinkedIn or something?
Yes. And the reason is because you're saying that you do help, not that you are helping. Right? The can is just extra words. So I personally help people with all forms of emotional issues throughout the job search. There might be one I haven't come across yet that will be new to me, but I will help, right? as much as I can before like referring them to a therapist, right? And like the idea here is I want you to be confident in your ability to help. If you're not confident, they won't be confident. If they're not confident, you won't get hired. No one is out here trying to give you a chance. They're out here for you to help them so that their shit doesn't get screwed up. Right? And again, with enough time in Google, can you do it? So given enough time in Google, can you help companies do these things? The answer is yes. Then you say can't. Then you say I do these things. It's uncomfortable, but it's accurate. Merging a background in nonprofit data reporting and obtaining a degree in community psychology, I help companies store, maintain, and organize their data efficiently. Awesome. Good job, Suzette. Because the other way to say it would be like, I'd like to help companies do these things, but that kind of negates everything you did in class, right? Because in class, what you did was you learned how to do these things, right? So the way I like to think about it is you're already the thing, okay? So this is what we'll pretty much end on, but you're already the thing. The first step to becoming a web developer is to learn how to be a web developer. Everyone who's a web developer had to go through a phase where they didn't know what they were doing and they learned how to do it, right? So it is phase one of your career is the learning how to do it, which means you're already in the career. It's not once someone gives you a paycheck, you're a web developer. You become a web developer and then someone gives you a paycheck to do it for them, right? The same way as like, I'm a career coach, but I get paid hourly. So do I cease to be a career coach because I'm not being paid as soon as we hang up this call? No, I'm still a career coach. I'm just not actively on the call with the client, right? Or let's say you're a marketing director and you get laid off from your job. Do you cease to be a marketer? No, you cease to be a marketing director at, Allstate, but you don't lose your marketer image, right? Your self-image as a marketer. So you're already web developers. You're just web developers looking for your next opportunity. All right. Finishing up your class and looking for your next opportunity. And if you believe you're a web developer, they will believe you're a web developer. But if you don't believe it, they're going to question you. They might still hire you, but they'll question you. And so if I came to you and I was like, I'm a career coach who can help people with their job search. It's just slightly less confident than I'm a career coach who helps people with their job search,
That makes sense.
Yeah,
didn't know.
I'm just beating a dead horse here. So very cool. That's going to wrap things up for us. How did you get here? What did you do and how does it help? And I'll open it up for questions, and feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn if, things come up and you want to keep chatting. I've also got a podcast by the same name, Career Therapy. But yeah, let's open it up for questions. Anything that we didn't get to that you were hoping to discuss, or anything that you want to go deeper into?
I have a question.
Yeah.
Do you have any suggestions for like online resources that offer career coaching that might be free to help us down the road?
Free career coach. So I think you have career coaching in your program. I think. So someone might correct me on that. But I think you have someone on staff that helps out a little bit at least. So start there. Lean on each other. One of the best ways to learn is to like help each other out. And then other free resources, I think almost every career coach has some sort of like YouTube channel, blog, email list. Find someone that you like their style and go follow them and see what they put out there. And then when it comes to like mock interviews, there's so many different services. I have a coaching program, but it's not free. There's trying to think of free resources. themuse.com. Go to themuse.com and take a look at all their resources. They have an incredible amount of resources on their website. So start there, and then you can branch off into other places.
Wonderful. Thank you.
You got it. Sammy, is your hand still raised from before, or is this a new hand raise?
Oh, it's a new one.
Cool. What's up?
So I have 2 questions. They're not specifically related to the interview part, but so since I'm like, a junior developer and just fresh, it's not like a bunch of employers are going to be lining up, to hire me. And so
Sure.
my options will be limited. So, and I don't necessarily care too much about the pay rather than just getting my foot in the door and getting the experience.
Mhm.
So what would you suggest is like the time period that I should try to get a job without worrying about the pay and holding off for potentially getting a new one with a higher pay?
When you say like, what's the time? What do you mean time frame?
So like what I'm trying to say is, let's say I get an offer, but it's not like the highest paying job, right?
Oh, yeah,
And
yeah,
so
yeah.
should I hold off on that for a long period versus, continuing to search until I find one that has really optimal pay?
No. So here's my view on it. It's all about comparisons. If you have 2 offers, then you get to negotiate and you get to choose the best one, right? If you have 1 offer and your other option is to continue not making any money and not gaining any experience, you take what's real, all right? And where this tends to come up most often is when someone gets an offer, but they're still interviewing with another place, and they don't want to say yes to that offer because they think the other one's going to come through and they like the company better, or they think it'll pay more. So then they screw up the first offer, and then the second offer doesn't come through, and then they have nothing. It happens so much. I want to empower you to realize if a company hired you and then their budget changed, they would fire you, no matter how much they say we're family, okay? So treat them the way they treat you, but be nice, just be business. It's business, not personal, right? It's business, not personal. So if you are applying for a job and you get an offer and you're not able to like get the other answer for the other job in time before you have to make a decision, take the real offer. It is better to be gaining money and gaining experience than to be job searching still. And I'll give you a very specific example of this. I have a lot of these stories, but I had one person who wanted to make 60K. So they were applying for jobs and they got an offer, and the offer was 50K. And they tried to negotiate and the company didn't have the budget. So what did they do? They turned it down. And they came to me and they said, so I turned down that job. They couldn't pay me what I deserved. And I said, deserved? Right now you make no money. So any amount of money is what you deserve, but okay. And I said, okay, well, what other offers do you have? And they said, none. And I go, okay, what other interviews do you have going on? None. When was your last networking meeting? Oh, well, I was interviewing for this job, so it's been a couple months. Okay, when was the last application you sent out? Oh, like a month or 2 ago. Okay, now I'm getting nervous because when you're at 0, it takes like a typical interview process is like 2 months once you get it, once you get the interview. And it takes like a month or 2 to get interviews. So like we're 3 months away from a job now, 4 months maybe. And how much did you turn it down for? And they said $10,000. I wanted 60. They gave me 50. And I go, and how much money are you going to lose in the next 3 to 6 months trying to find your next role? Because they did eventually get a job that paid 60K. But while they were waiting for that 60K job, they lost all of the potential revenue from the job that paid 50K. So what they should have done was take the 50K job, work it for 4 months, get the 60K job, and then decide if they want to leave the first job for the second one, right? Keep interviewing. I got no problem with that. Quit jobs, quit them in the best way possible. Recommend someone to replace you, train that person. Be very kind and generous with everything. But don't feel like there's a phrase that a family member used to always annoy me and when they would say this, but now I actually believe it. Make hay while the sun is shining. So if someone's giving you an opportunity, make hay, like go make that money, go do that job. At the very least, it will give you the confidence to then go get another job that pays even better, right? My first coaching job was like a few hours a week and it was like crap hourly pay. But once I had that, I was like, well, at least I got that. So now I'm going to go negotiate my ass off for these other roles. And I, worked my way up to a really good salary. But I think that sometimes we lose sight of like the bigger picture when we're too focused on like the starting salary. And the key thing is, and this probably answers your question a little bit more directly, Sammy, is the big pay bump is going to happen when you leave that first company for the next company. That's usually when the big pay bump happens. So just be sure to negotiate that one really good.
Okay. Yeah, I think that definitely answers my question. And then my second question is, how long does it typically take for someone, who doesn't have experience like me to land, a job?
The average amount of time it takes to find a job is 3 to 6 months, depending on how active you are. Granted, remote, pandemic, all these different things, holidays play into it. But I wouldn't worry about the external factors. I would focus on networking your ass off, applying to things online, and trying to get referrals. Online applications for people breaking into industries is usually around 1 to 4% response rate. That's not yeses. That's just anyone responding to your application. So I had someone earlier today said, I've been job searching for a year. I've applied to 20 places and I've only heard back from 2. And I said, yeah, that's right. What's the issue? And they're like, it's been a year. And I'm like, yeah, because you're not job searching. That's not the job search. The job search is meeting people, talking to people, getting internal. 80% of jobs are found through internal referrals. Because if you think about it, the way a company hires is they say, can anyone in our company do this so that we don't have to pay anyone any more money? No one can do it? Okay, does anyone know anyone who can do this? And if you have more than 100 employees, of course, someone in the company knows someone who can do this. And then the companies that can't find an internal referral go to the job boards and the recruiters. So it's like the last of the last, right? So try and meet people in your field, try and build relationships with people who do the work that you wish you were doing. The number of times I talk to a web developer and I say, do you know anyone who does web development? And they say, no. We got to get you meeting some people who do web development, lots of them. And there are lots of them, so it shouldn't be that hard. But I say, I'll leave you with this. Go on LinkedIn, click on the people search. If you go to the search bar, click on the search bar, don't type anything in, hit enter. It takes you to the search page. And then there's a button that says people. And then click on, I'll just show you really quick. All right. Oh, I have my site blocker up. Let's try that again. Little laugh for you. So click on the search bar, hit enter, click on people, go to all filters, go to your location, or if you want to be remote, to United States. Go to industry. I like to focus like on education. What is ed tech? I never know what ed tech is under. If you Google LinkedIn industry codes, it shows you all of them. E-learning. It's always under e-learning, not ed tech. There we go. So I work in e-learning and then look for software developer. there are 5 people who work as software developers in e-learning in Chicago. If you want to take away Chicago and make the United States, now we've got 311 people. These are the people that are doing the job you wish you were doing. So you should know who they are, what they do, how they got there, and you should probably start building relationships with those people, because one of them is going to quit or get promoted or need someone to be their junior. And you want to be the first one on the list. All right. So I'll leave you with that. If you have more questions, hit me up on LinkedIn, and good luck with your search, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Introduce.
Thank you, Martin.